In your lifetime, you have processed innumerable tons of groceries, and therefore you are what you eat. Every fiber and cell of your bodies is beefsteak and potatoes and so on in the course of being processed humanly. And therefore those people who stand at the entryway whereby this stream enters the human organism and becomes changed into our form is in a very responsible position. For as cook, standing at the kitchen range, you are most veritably a priest at an altar. And if you do not realize the priestly and magical nature of your function as a cook, you are doing the human race a great disservice. The trouble is, of course, that the average person who cooks in our culture is a harassed housewife who has to do this every day to get meals ready for children and adults who are fundamentally in a hurry to do something else other than eat. Breakfast in the morning is usually a madhouse, because everybody has to get up to get the children off to school in time and get the husband of the family off to work in time. And this is usually postponed to the last minute, among other reasons, because, of course, going to bed the night before was postponed to the last minute, because there was some fun going on the night before, because of which one had to hurry through dinner in order to get out to it, whatever it was. When we do tend to regard meals as medicine rather than diet. We will take packages of ordinary foodstuffs, and we will find on them in small print the same sort of chemical analysis of what's in it as you get in a bottle of pills. Every package of food has to have its contents spelled out, you see, as if it were medicine. You buy, say, an ordinary envelope of gelatin, and there's a chemical formula on it, because we are looking at this food for what good it will do for us. We are firmly of the opinion, therefore, that we eat in order to live rather than that we live in order to eat. Therefore, the pleasures of the table, the art of the kitchen, is simply relegated to being a means to an end. It enables us to continue our biological existence in order to what? Make money, or be cultured. And people who listen to music or go to plays or read books with the motivation of becoming cultured people never listen to the music, don't understand the play, and don't really read books, because they always have one eye on what kind of person this activity is turning me into, what status it gives me. Therefore, one never really does it. So in order to be human, in order to be cultured and civilized in the highest sense of the word, it is absolutely necessary to everyday life that we take the art of cooking sincerely, that we regard the process that goes on at the table as one of fundamental spiritual and religious importance, and make it a yoga. Not only what goes on in the kitchen, but also what goes on at the table itself must for us become an occasion where we regard ourselves as involved in one of the most important, worthwhile things that we do. Because you see, if you only eat in order to live, you will not digest your food properly. You will bolt it, wolf it down just to stop the gnawing. And so I must quote Henry Miller: throw anything down the hatch to stop the gnawing feeling and swallow a dozen vitamins. If that doesn't work, see a surgeon. If that doesn't work, get a Hollywood funeral. They're the duckiest, the cutest funerals. Why? You can have your beloved propped up, reading something like the Bhagavad Gita and smoking a cigarette. Forever. Cigarette guaranteed not to rot away before the lips or the buttocks. Oh, death, where is thy sting? Oh, grave, where is thy victory? Jolly, what, eh? But that's the problem, you see, of this using food merely as a means to an end. I was in the airport trying to find something for lunch just before coming down here, and there were 3 girls in their late teens sitting at a table next to us. And their lunch consisted of French fried potatoes with ketchup and Coca-Cola. That's what they were putting down. And this sort of thing goes on all over the place. Lucius Beebe, who was a great bon vivant, once said that south of the Mason-Dixon line, everything is fried in rancid axle grease. And that's pretty much true. I remember not so long ago that for my sins, I was lecturing in the state of Virginia. And I was in colleges most of the time, you see. And I was condemned, therefore, to eat the offerings of college cafeterias and sorority and fraternity house cooking. And it was so abominable that I literally starved. You may say I'm fussy, but I will not eat unless I am literally starving, and have been starving for days and days when anything will taste good. But a normal person should not be asked to eat the incredible messes of ruthlessly boiled vegetables, meat that has suffered in electronic purgatories for hours and is served to you in a gravy that is made of water, bouillon cubes, and library paste. This is simply not fit for human consumption, and the fact that the whole academic world, without question, faculty and students, eat this notorious garbage, is of course rotting their brains and making them highly uncivilized. That are just unpardonable. There is no excuse for this at all. And part of the reason is that college kitchens are supervised by dietitians as distinct from cooks. And these 2 classes of persons are really mutually exclusive. Because the dietitian thinks of food in terms of its chemical contents, in terms of its calories, its vitamins, its proteins, and so thinks through a test tube. Whereas an accomplished cook thinks with his tongue, and with his belly, and with what fundamentally is good for his gut. And an accomplished cook comes from a long tradition, be it of French cooking, or of Chinese cooking, or of Indonesian cooking, Indian cooking, or whatever it is. He has a long, long historical tradition behind him of excellence. And the French cook, no one is more proud, no one is more delighted with his art. And the vintner who goes with him is also equally important as a person in seeing that human beings remain civilized at the table, and that the table is not simply treated in the same way as the bathroom. The bathroom is the output room and is always sort of relegated to unconsciousness because we don't like to admit that we do these things. And so when you carry the bathroom attitude to the kitchen, as I suggested already, the kitchen begins to look like a bathroom because it is just the input room, and no real reverence is accorded to the art of cooking. Well, I think that if we want to have a true civilization, we want to be people of great culture, great humanity, a lot of it begins in the kitchen and goes on around the eating table. In Christianity, after all, we have the Mass as a central rite. The Holy Communion, the eating of bread and the drinking of wine, because in Mediterranean civilization at the time when Jesus lived, bread was the staple food and wine was the staple drink. People didn't drink water, for God's sake, because you could never trust water, what was in it. Therefore, if you had a certain alcoholic content in the water, it was drinkable. But beyond that, of course, the nurture of grapes and the production of very fine, loved and matured wines was a way of bottling sunshine. And you will find to this day that in any restaurant where wine is not served in Western culture, they do not understand food. Food and wine in the Western tradition are inseparable. And wine is not alcohol in the sense of vodka or whiskey or whatever is hard liquor. Wine is food. And when an Italian family is asked a questionnaire to put down what it spends on food, what it spends on drink, they will always include the wine under the food expenditure. They don't imagine that it's spent on drink. Yes, they would say, all right, if we bought some whiskey, that would be drink, as distinct from food, but wine is food. And so these things blend themselves together. And when anybody who really understands wine opens a bottle of wine, you will notice that they always do it with a certain ritualistic attitude. They will carefully draw the cork, and they will sniff the cork to see that the flavor is all right. Then they will pour a little wine into a glass and allow it to roll around the glass, and you should always use a rather, for table wines like clarets, burgundies, chablis, sauterne, all those wines, you should use a rather large glass, what the French call a ballon, a balloon glass, so that almost like brandy you can catch the perfume of the wine in the glass. And you roll the wine around and sniff it, and you may take a tiny sip to see that it's all right. Meanwhile, the wine pourer stands beside you to see if you approve. It may be yourself as host of the table. And you put it down, and then you serve the other guests, but you don't fill this kind of glass to the top. You fill it about 1/3 or 1/2, so that an area is left above the wine to catch the perfume. And then you gently savor it. You don't wolf it down in a gulp. Now you see there's a ritualistic attitude to that. Wine is something precious and valued. And if you follow wine and are interested in it, you can learn the art, for example, of being almost blindfold. I don't mean that literally. It's the bottle that's blindfolded, because you need your eyes as well as your nose and tongue to test wines. You need to look at it, how it clings or doesn't cling to the side of the glass, and so on. And experts, of course, can guess rather accurately what wine they're drinking, where it's from. It's not easy to, in fact, it's probably a kind of fairy tale that people can pin down the actual vineyard. Just they can do so occasionally in a fluky way, if they happen, for example, to be the manufacturer of that wine itself. They might pin down the actual vineyard. But you see, wherever wine is revered, the serving of wine is attended with ritual. Now I'm pointing out what is good cooking also is attended with ritual, because you are, as cook, a priest at an altar, and you are at a vital moment in human life, in the point where other biological existences, be they animal or vegetable, are being transformed so as to enter the human system and to become us. And so, as Lin Yu Tang once beautifully put it, a fish which has died for you and is not well cooked has died in vain. Here you see we face a serious ethical problem, since we do depend on all these other creatures for our life. What is our responsibility towards them? You can't avoid this. You can become a vegetarian if you're squeamish about it, but that's only a gesture. You're still destroying living beings to eat apples, tomatoes, cabbages, lettuce, all those things, cereals. You're still destroying other forms of life. And so the only possible good ethical response to finding ourselves in this situation is not only, of course, the obvious one of putting to good use the energies which we derive from them, but also the immediate respect, shall I say, the grace, the thanksgiving of honoring what we eat by cooking it to perfection.